Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another video. Today is sort of a part 2 from my previous speed build. I do recommend that you go and check that out first if you are going to watch today's video, because this build is actually the bottom 2 levels of the previous one. So in my previous speed build, I did the Horn King's Castle from the Black Cauldron. And in that video, I told you guys that I was going to be reserving the bottom 2 floors to create Hades' Underworld. So that is what we are going to be creating today. So Hades will live in the castle, but it will feel basically like an entirely different space. I'm actually going to lock the door that leads to these 2 levels to basically only Hades, Pain and Panic, and obviously you can change that later on if you download the save and you want to have different Hercules characters be able to enter or exit, or for whatever gameplay really. But it's going to feel like its own space that is very magical, very different. Even just compared to the rest of the castle, the space is entirely different and obviously could only be reached through very specific means. So I have actually envisioned doing a build like this for the longest time. Somebody did a Disney villains challenge video and I had picked Hades and I built this entire like underworld type of build. It was above ground and it was more like a castle that if you kind of ignored the background, it was supposed to feel like the underworld, but it wasn't actually the underworld. There were no references from that castle to the Hercules movie. I basically just made up whatever I wanted to. So for this build, I wanted to actually stick to the source material. So I went back through Hercules and kind of rewatched a lot of the scenes with Hades and the underworld and wrote down as many references as I could find to sort of cram into this space. Now, it is like smaller, obviously, than the underworld would actually be. I'm sure it is caverns and caverns deep and just super wide and just this massive build that I could have potentially done. But in order to, like I mentioned in the previous video, combine a couple of different characters in one space and make sure that they're all included, we're just going to do the 2 levels. And I think that regardless of the lack of space, I have managed to fit pretty much all of the references that I wanted to do in this area, and especially given the limited amount of objects that we have in The Sims, especially in regards to like fire, demons, ghosts, spirits, that kind of stuff that you would really associate with the underworld. I made do with what we had and I'm really happy with it. So one of the things that they do show in the movie is the actual like cliff of spirits that Hercules jumps over the edge of to get Meg's spirit out. That particular pool or body of water, although I am sure it is connected to the River of Styx, was kind of a green toned pool, so it felt like its own little area, and I wanted to have like this cliff edge that you could walk up to and dive off of. Now obviously you cannot actually get up to that space. It is non-functional. It is more just like a decorative little area, but it is meant to look like it is connected to the rest of the water down here, which again is obviously supposed to be the River of Styx, and in a weird way feel like its own little space but still be connected to everything else. So you'll notice that they're actually not connected, and that is because I wanted to dye one green while the River of Styx itself is shown as being blue in the movie. So I had to make sure that they were actually separate, but we were able to give the illusion that they are one connected body of water. The other thing that you really get some cool depictions of is his entrance into the underworld when he is on one of the, I don't know what you would call them other than paddle boats, but I'm sure that there's a different terminology for them, when he is going into the underworld for the first time and you get to see like the grand entrance, which is like this huge skull made of rocks, or just like a rock that looks like a skeleton, which I knew was going to be extremely tricky. And if I had more space and if I was maybe like a 10 times more talented builder, I probably could have mashed a bunch of rocks together to look like a skeleton. But we do have a few skull objects in the game, so I figured to do a representation of that would probably fare a little bit better, and then do my own spin on it. So these blue flames that come out of the top of the skeletons, I did not do that everywhere, but it is a trick that I love to do in reference to the Hades character, and I definitely did that on my previous speed build when I made that castle so long ago. I love taking the water fountains that come in the various colors and using them instead as fire, because honestly they look pretty much the same. And I also have built in the past a Bowser castle from Mario, and I did a very similar idea there where I used the moat around the castle and made it kind of look like lava instead of water, and then take these fountains in the various red, orange, yellow colors and kind of do them as flames. So in my opinion, it works. I really, really love the result, and kind of putting them through some of the skeleton heads to symbolize Hades' character. I just think it's really clever and fun. So I definitely carried that idea around a little bit in here. Now, another thing that was really important to me was that this felt very rocky, deep in the ground, that maybe you couldn't even really see the walls for the most part. If you put the walls all the way down, it is the best version of this build for both floors to just like play with the walls off. That is when you're going to get the full effect. But I still wanted the walls to be mostly covered if you are somebody who plays with like half walls or full walls up, and have them feel instead like they are made of rocks, which was a really long and complicated process of finding debug rocks and sort of twisting them through the walls to cover everything up, but try and make sure that you can still play with everything, you can still walk around, and that they're not cutting too much into the little details that I have placed around. So that was actually most of the build, and I caught all of that footage because obviously it's just not something that's super interesting, as well as lining the river of sticks with rocks too, in order to make it feel more organic as well. Something else that's shown in the movie is Hades goes down to a room with Pain and Panic, and he is grabbing some kind of a special potion, which is shown in the movie that they give to Hercules, and it kind of carries the plot forward in the movie. And the area around that potion is very specific. It was like its own room. There was only one of it, and you can tell that Hades was saving it for a really big, important moment. So again, ideally, this would have had its own space entirely, and it would have had bigger skeletons. If we had maybe just like a couple more skulls and skeleton objects in the game, some that are like huge and kind of curving, because in the movie they look like they are holding the walls up and they are sort of curved in on each other like in a big cave format. So instead I just wanted to do like a small representation of that, again using this bottle item from the Star Wars pack, which I just am so over the moon about the little clutter objects in the Star Wars pack. I cannot get over how much I have been using. Even just this bottle is probably my most used item from the Star Wars pack. I don't even know what it is. And like, I've used it all upstairs in previous builds, basically since I've downloaded the Star Wars pack. So I do think that it will come in handy for builds like this. And it actually looks really close to what is shown in the movie. It's like this red bottle. So that worked out pretty perfectly. And still keeping the idea of doing like the circular space with the skeletons sort of surrounding it, but without dedicating an entire room to it. Also because it's not really necessary. It's not going to be a super play heavy area. Like even if I was to create an entirely different room for it, there's just no need for the space. You won't be able to do anything in it. It's all just kind of for show anyway. Really, the only thing that was super important was making sure that this was also a functional bedroom for Hades' character. And like I mentioned, Pain and Panic will actually sleep in the servants' room upstairs, so they are not even allowed to even like sleep down here, and I wasn't worried about really making a full space for them. So basically, when you enter this first floor of the Underworld, it is almost entirely decoration, but I think that obviously a lot of what the Underworld is just like big empty open spaces, and it's not like Hades has a ton of furniture laying around or like anything too particular, even from just going through the movie. So it was more just representing ideas from the movie itself and trying to bring in little bits there. And then the bottom floor underneath this one is what is actually going to be his bedroom and more of like the functional space in terms of gameplay. I've actually been waiting for an opportunity to use those little skulls with the bones item forever. I discovered it a few builds ago that it comes with Jungle Adventure, and it's something that I probably would have been aware of if I actually ever played through the Jungle Adventure pack, but I wasn't. And I think one day I just typed in bones into the search bar just to kind of see what was going on, and I found that as an object, and I knew I was going to save the use of them for this build in particular. And I'm sure we will use them in different builds, but I actually have not used that item in any any of my speed builds ever on my channel. So it was a fun opportunity. I knew I wanted to do like this stacked and layering and lots of skulls all over the place for obviously the entire idea of the Underworld. Something you'll notice is that a lot of the rocks are different shades of gray, blue, green, purple, and that entirely has to do with how far they are in or out of the wall and what else is surrounding them. Another trick that I really love to do and have definitely done a lot up until this point, there is a lava lamp object that comes with Strangerville, and it has a really, really bright glowing light in it, which you can actually make any light in the game any color, but you have to go into live mode and change it, and it's kind of an extra step that I don't always love to do. Even for what you guys are seeing here and maybe the screenshots at the end as well, I may go in and tweak some of the coloring here and there and take away some of like the yellow toned lights from the candles and change them to blues and greens and that kind of stuff just to give the full ambiance. But items that already come with predetermined lighting color are super helpful for builders, and I hide little lava lamps like that everywhere in builds like this where I'm trying to get certain tones going. So the lava lamps are actually all under the water, and in between the walls they're shrunk down so tiny that you won't see them for the most part. You will see the glowing animation when they are in live mode. They kind of have like the lava going around, but them being in water and the location that we're actually in, I didn't actually think that that was too big of an issue, and if anything probably worked for the build. Even though this is a very, very intimidating build, I think the only real problem with trying to do something like this is that obviously the River of Styx is something that would carry on sort of infinitely, and you would probably see it going off of the lot, and you would want to even like carry it deep into a mountainside or have like a beginning point and an end point. And you can argue about if this is the beginning or end point for the River of Styx, what have you, but I wanted to even maybe like swirl it around the lot so that you could see it going off into the distance, but I just hate the way that it cuts off at the edge of the lot. So instead, I kind of tunneled it around this build, almost trying to make it look like it was going down infinitely, so you can't see the beginning or the end of it, but you know that it is all there. And that was hopefully to give the illusion that it is sort of never ending, and you're not, it's not jarring to find an area where it begins and where it ends. And that has a lot to do with rock placement and where everything is kind of half going into rocks, half going into walls. And then I also found a really cool object, which is going to be the very, very last part of the video. And I think it's from Get to Work and probably has something to do with aliens and the alien, not the alien career, the aliens that were added with that pack. There is this like glowing blue river object, which again, never had an opportunity to use. And even if I didn't want to do pools, or if I couldn't have done pools for this build, which I almost couldn't, I was kind of struggling with how I was going to get the pools to work to get the actual functioning river, but I managed to make it work. But if I hadn't, I did find this object last moment that really looks like the same idea and could have been placed around pretty much the same exact way. It wouldn't have been like the same, I don't think, because it doesn't have the depth and the actual, like, you could swim in this water if you wanted to. You would have to find an entry point, which again, I've kind of blocked everything off so that you can't, but you could theoretically. And instead, I decided to use the object like around the build and kind of swirl it all the way down. You guys will see in the very, very last part of the video, and definitely in the screenshots. So again, for this second floor, it's really just a bedroom, but I also wanted it to be a throne room. And then one more reference from the movie is the scene where Hades walks in and he is speaking to the three witches of fate. And they do have names. I don't know them. And I'm sure that they are based off of real Greek mythology as well. But he's speaking to them and kind of looking to figure out what the future is going to be, and like he wants to take over the world. And there's one object that is sort of the purpose of the entire room, and it looks like it is some kind of an object to look over Earth and maybe plot certain things out, because he makes like a little baby Hercules and he puts it on the table, and you don't really get an explanation for what that object is. If anything, it could just be like a mock strategy table with some magic intertwined, but it was something that they had shown, and from the very limited amount of things that they do show in the Underworld, I wanted to have something. So again, instead of dedicating dedicating an entire room to something that's not going to be super functional, I just decided that we would recreate something with the same general idea, not necessarily the same look, and we'll put it in the same exact space as the throne. Now, another thing I think a lot of people don't know is that Hades is actually super big. Like, he is really, really massive, and he kind of shrinks himself down and changes his size depending on what is around him or where he is. Like, if he's on Earth, he is sort of normal size, but even when he's shown in like some of his thrones, and when there's a couple scenes in the movie that are him kind of watching over what's going on Earth, and he is super big. So I sized the throne up and figured that that would be like his natural normal state. I'm gonna have to play test and see how weird that looks. I might just size it back down depending on how that actually ends up looking. But other than that, we really just had to decorate the space so that he would be okay to live down here. Sims wise, you don't really get pictures of like his bed, his like seating arrangements, that kind of stuff, and for the most part I don't even think he really needs it in the realm of Disney. Like, maybe from Greek mythology, obviously you would want to have some of that stuff, but you don't really get images for things like that. So a lot of it is just me doing what I think would be the best, obviously using the very same fireplace from Realm of Magic, the one that I love so much because it does come with blue flame as the default, so it just makes so much sense to use it in here. And I think that bed is from Get Famous, and then the base game dresser that I used pretty much entirely throughout the rest of the castle, and that is basically going to round out the space down here. I didn't really want to do like another full-size kitchen, and like I said before, I think Pain and Panic for the most part would do all of the cooking, cleaning, that kind of stuff that you won't even really see in the Disney movie, because I don't think Greek gods are like concerned with that kind of stuff. But for the purposes of the Sims, we do have to make sure that your Sims stay alive, at least for now. If they were to add something in the future that makes it so you can make gods or superheroes or a different kind of a cult that doesn't require those basic necessities of human life, which would be perfect, by the way, and I hope that they do add something like that so that I can make them most accurately. I think for now, Hades is going to be a spellcaster, which is kind of hard because he does fit the boat for vampire, in my opinion, as well. You could probably get away with either, but him being a Greek god, he is shown as being like magically inclined and having powers, and I think that that element is more important than translating him to maybe even like a vampire. So for now, we'll probably make all of the Greek gods that I do for the Disney Save spellcasters until they add like a different occult state. Hopefully, they might never. That would work a little bit better for something in that instance, or maybe even aliens, but they can't really use magic, so that would be the only problem with that. And that is actually going to be the end of today's video. Let me know what you thought of it in the comment section down below. If you would like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below, or the one at the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hit that little bell icon below to turn on post notifications so you can get updated every single time I post. And I will talk to you all in the next one.